It's the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, brought to you by Stock Car Steel and Aluminum and SRI Supplies. Here's tonight's Speed 77 Radio Race Chaser Online crew chief, Tom Baker.
Howdy, howdy. Another Thursday night of motorsports conversation begins right now on Performance Motorsports Network, the voice of motorsports. You are listening to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show. I am Tom Baker, the senior editor of Race Chaser Online, and joining me at the proverbial round table tonight are two of my colleagues from Race Chaser, Jacob Seelman, our managing editor, and Kyle Magda, one of our Northeast correspondents. Three of us will be talking racing with you for the next couple of hours, and we're going to cover a very wide spectrum here tonight as we attempt to basically combine two shows. Normally, we would do Motorsports Madness on Monday nights, which covers most all of the national and some of the international racing series, along with some grassroots and regional stuff. But of course, this past Monday, being Labor Day, it was a holiday, did not air Motorsports Madness. Therefore, tonight becomes a combination of Motorsports Madness and the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, which mainly focuses on stock car type cars. And so we're going to do a little bit of a lot of things tonight, and we hope that you'll enjoy being along for the ride. We've got a lot of ground to cover. And then, Jacob, I'll start with you. Let's go back to last Sunday evening, since we did not have a chance to lead off with this on Monday. Let's talk about it now. Carl Edwards won. I won because Carl Edwards won. And the fans and the drivers won because the aero package they used at Kentucky, they used at Darlington, was again a huge hit. That is two races now where that package has worked well. Are you buying or selling that this just ought to be in the cars for next year and forget it?
Well, if Instagram is any key on what we're going to see next year, I'm buying that not only is this going to be in the cars next year, but NASCAR's finally listening to what the fans and drivers want, and we're going to see an even bigger move towards less downforce next year. If you haven't, race fans, seen the mock-up of what an engineer from Chip Ganassi Racing with Felix Sabates is right now calling a test car. But a lot of people have already said this is the direction NASCAR wants to go for next year. It's really quite remarkable. I don't want to get into all the technical gibberish of exactly what this means right this second, but I can tell you less downforce, less side force, a smaller spoiler, a smaller splitter. They want to make these cars even harder to drive than they were Sunday night. I love it. I love that NASCAR finally is starting to see the light. We saw it Sunday night. There were 18 cautions at Darlington. That's a record, but that's because drivers could actually screw up for a change. It was fantastic. The throwback theme was incredible. I know that's another bullet point, Tom, that I want to get to in just a minute. But as far as the racing itself, Carl Edwards came from 2 laps down after he had a tire problem and had to make an unscheduled pit stop prior to lap 100, came back and won the race. And the dominant car in Brad Keselowski absolutely didn't. Carl gets his second win of the season. Kyle Busch clinches a spot in the chase, and Joe Gibbs Racing renames Darlington to Carlington with a beautifully placed piece of white duct tape that I just thought was brilliant in its simplicity. And I give the 19 team an A+++ for creativity.
Well, I think we could argue that there was a throwback race that happened with the package the way it was. It looked like
1998.
It did. It definitely looked like NASCAR from the 90s, if not even farther back than that. It was certainly an old-fashioned Darlington race with a lot of Darlington stripes, a lot of caution flags, and some people were complaining, well, too many yellows. Well,
wow.
Again, we complain when there's no yellows because we say the race is boring. Then we complain when there's 17 or 18 and the race is great because we say there's too many cautions. Some fans are just never going to be happy, and I think we just don't listen to those. It's one of those situations where I think this was a magic weekend for a lot of reasons. Number one, it was a great race. Number two, again, you talked about the throwback paint schemes. We went beyond that. We had throwback graphics on the broadcast on NBC. We had throwback announcers on NBC's broadcast for a little while. We certainly had throwback outfits on NBC's broadcasters. And I think for the ones that the new broadcasting crew wore, I don't think they threw them back nearly far enough, Jacob. But of course, we also had a throwback to the original theme on MRN. I mean, can we just agree that this was a really cool weekend to look back and have fun? And that whoever the dumb was from Beyond the Flag that took NASCAR to task for coming up with this gimmick, but because the quote was, it won't do anything to bring new fans into the sport. Can we agree that he just gets the Donkey of the Week award and move on?
Absolutely. I didn't even read the article in question because I was just I didn't even have to read past the headline to know that it was ridiculous. Here's the deal. First off, Throwback Booth gets an A+ for the weekend because I have to admit I was a little bit nervous going into this. Maybe the misgivings of the fact that at least Ned had been out of the sport for a little while. Ken's been doing the public address for all the SMI tracks, so he's really been up to task and in on the sport still since he left the CBS crew in 2000. But they got in the booth on Sunday night, and all three of them, Ned, Dale, and Ken, never missed a beat. It was fantastic. For me, it was like going back and playing one of the old cassette tapes my dad had on record for me back from when I was a little kid, and being able to truly again get a taste of what you, Tom, and me to some extent grew up listening to. It was unbelievable, really. And I have to admit, at about lap 110, when they had to give up the reins and go back to Rick, Jeff, and Steve, I was truly disappointed. I could have sat there and listened to Ken Squire, Ned, and Dale Jarrett call the rest of the race and been perfectly happy because it was brilliance in its simplicity, and I love the fact that NBC decided to go that route. I thought it wasn't long enough nearly, and I hope that this is not the last time that we do something like this. I've heard speculation that this is part of a master plan between NASCAR and Darlington, and this is not going to be a one-time thing, that every year for about the next 5 or so, that we're going to throw it back to a different era in NASCAR's past, which, if the information I've gotten is true, and that's what we're getting ready to do over the next couple of years, I say bring it on. This whole weekend was a win for NASCAR. It wasn't a glorified PR stunt, and I feel like you do this, you introduce newer fans to the history that is part of NASCAR. I feel like the racing's getting back there for next year. We took a huge step Sunday night, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that, and that was my thought too when I read the article that was written. Is this is a great way to help people understand where the sport came from and introduce them to some of the key players from the past. And Kyle Magda, you and I watched the race from Lighthouse Lanes up at Oswego, which is right on the Oswego Speedway grounds. And I point that out because for our audience, just to set the scene, that we kind of walked into the race a little bit late because we were covering the International Classic race.
Yeah, you guys missed the good part.
Yeah, we missed. I got there. The problem was there was no sound. We could see it, but we couldn't hear it. So I got there before Ned and Dale and Ken Squire actually handed the reins back over, but we couldn't hear the announcer. So it was, in that sense, I didn't get to participate in that when it was going on live, but we did see the racing. And Kyle, I think you and I can agree on one thing, and that is that the race itself certainly lived up to the hype, and that Carl Edwards made one whale of a comeback and almost didn't, because he just got there at the end. I mean, it could just as easily have fallen if he hadn't have. I think he ended up, if I remember right, he came back out in the lead after the last sequence of pit stops. If that hadn't happened, he could just as easily have not been the winner as he was to be the winner.
Yeah, when that last caution came out, I didn't think it was pretty much going to come down to the pit crews there, and the 19 team pulled off a fantastic stop and just pretty much drove Carl Edwards to the victory there. So, good driving by Carl. And yeah, Tom, I mean, we couldn't hear too much, unfortunately, but thankfully there was a replay on NBC Sports Network a couple of days, which was good, because then I got to hear that part with the throwback for NBC. So, yeah, it was a good package. I didn't get to experience it all because, we were busy at Oswego, but, it was a good race. I mean, I thought it came down. It was likely to come down between Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick there in the end, and the yellow flew. So, it was a good race. A lot of exciting racing. I was on the edge of my seat there. So, hopefully they bring everything back next year, and it's good to see it back on Labor Day, Jacob.
Yeah. By the way, let's clarify that Carl Edwards doesn't win that race without the pit stop, because I think his car had fallen off enough, his tires had fallen off enough that he wouldn't have caught Keselowski and Harvick. Though if that race had stayed green to the finish, Kevin Harvick was making one whale of a charge towards the front. And, we say all the time, Tom, races are won and lost on pit road. Carl Edwards' pit crew won him a race. Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick's pit crews lost them a Southern 500. For Harvick, it was a shot at a second straight Southern 500. So there was a lot that went on. I loved it. The throwback theme even extended to the Xfinity race that was held on Saturday night. And that also means that we have a little bit more to talk about from Darlington here coming up in just a couple of minutes. We're going to do some business, though, right now. So around the turn, we'll revisit Darlington Raceway and come back with more of Thursday Night Madness on the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show here on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Parents, your son or daughter has had their license for a while now, but you want to make sure they're prepared for any situation they may face on the road. High school driver's ed doesn't teach them to drive defensively. They need to be prepared for any highway emergency. For less than a month's insurance, and a whole lot less, BSR instructors at Summit Point Motorsports Park in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, will teach your son or daughter how to respond instantly and positively to unexpected situations on the road. BSR's specialized accident avoidance training teaches swerve to avoid maneuvers at highway speed, ocular driving, which focuses driving attention on ways to avoid accidents, vehicle dynamics and feedback, skid control and skid recovery, threshold braking on straights and progressive braking on curves, and off-road recovery techniques. This is stuff driver's ed simply doesn't teach. So call BSR today, 304-725-8444. Give your kid the skill set needed to drive safely and responsibly on the highway. That's 304-725-8444.
The odds of a young girl being discovered by an industry insider while singing to herself pumping gas. 1 in 300 million. The odds of a daughter of a clergyman from Severn, Maryland, spending 11 weeks at number 1 on the U.S. singles charts. 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 7 Grammy Awards. 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of selling over 40 million records. 1 in 800,000. The odds of this musician and performer having a child diagnosed with autism. 1 in 68. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Autism Speaks. It's time to listen. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Eric Darnell.
This is David Reagan. Jamie McMurray.
This is Carl Edwards here for RAD,
the entertainment industry's voice for road safety.
Want to make a difference? It's simple. Be responsible.
Plan ahead. Designate before you celebrate.
Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Performance Motorsports Network, your authority on motorsports of all types. Be listening for the most accurate and up-to-the-minute coverage of every motorsports activity that you enjoy on a daily basis. Be it NASCAR, be it IRL, be it Formula One, be it drag racing, be it dirt track, off-road, props, hulls, whatever. We are your source for motorsports. Performance Motorsports Network. The Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show continues now on the Performance Motorsports Network. And here's your host, Tom Baker.
Welcome back to Thursday Night Thunder, literally outside the studio here as we continue our show from the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, combining tonight with our Motorsports Madness show, kind of an all-in-one sort of thing. And definitely going to be fun as we continue through the show to bring some of our Monday night hosts in and talk a little bit about some different disciplines of the sport than we normally would on Thursday nights. We hope you're enjoying it. Tom Baker, along with Jacob Seelman and Kyle Magda, all of us from RaceChaserOnline.com, where we have unique and different sort of things every day with regard to all kinds of motorsports, from the local stuff all the way up to national and international. Check us out, and we hope you enjoy what you see. And as we continue the show here, we're talking NASCAR from Darlington from last Sunday and talking about Xfinity now, the NASCAR Xfinity Series on Saturday night, or Saturday afternoon, I guess. Started officially. And Jacob, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot that went on, and yet not a lot that went on. Denny Hamlin ended up winning this and becoming the 17th Cup racer. That's the 17th. Let me rephrase that stat. That is the 17th time a Cup racer has won an Xfinity race this year in 24 races. So they are 17 out of 24. So that's really not much of a story, but there were some other stories, like, for example, Daniel Suarez.
Yes, for example, Daniel Suarez. And there's an unfortunate part to this. Daniel Suarez was a story, but Daniel Suarez was not a story because of a particularly great reason. It was instead because he almost won $1 million and didn't. I'll go back to the beginning with all this because it actually goes all the way back to the Xfinity race at Dover, Tom, where Suarez had a speeding penalty. At the time, he was leading the Dash for Cash, as they call it, the program for Xfinity regulars that awards $100,000 to the highest finishing points driver in 4 designated races. Now, Suarez won 2 out of the 3 Dash for Cash races entering Darlington. Had he won the Dover race, in which he got a speeding penalty while he was in front in the Dash for Cash standings, he would have been eligible to win an extra $600,000 if he could win the Darlington race outright. Well, Tom, with 3 laps to go, Daniel Suarez was leading the Darlington race looking for his first Xfinity win. His teammate passed him because Daniel was running out of fuel, but it's one of those stories where you love that it almost happened, but at the same time, you hate that it almost happened, because I know a few people that made the comment to Daniel after the race that he was that close to about $1 million. And Suarez said, yeah, kind of unfortunate, isn't it? I know he was thinking about that speeding penalty at Dover going, if only. But as you said, Tom, almost only counts in 2 things: horseshoes and hand grenades. And I don't think we're talking about either one of those here.
No, that's exactly right. And I'm sure he appreciated all those people reminding him how close he was to $1 million too. That was a tough break, and that's just how it goes. And that's why in a series like NASCAR, where you have so many races, whether it's Xfinity or Cup, or even the Truck Series is over 20, that's a long racing series. It's a long point series is what I'm getting at. And if you're going to run, you have a little regional series, you run 10 or 12 races, you assume that every one of those races counts big time, because you really don't get, if you make a mistake or have a bad finish in one race out of 12, that's going to really be hard to make up. You would assume that if you make a mistake like that in one race out of 32 or 34 or whatever the Xfinity series is, you would assume that would be a big deal. But remember, we're not talking about overall points. We're talking about Dash for Cash. It's a little bit of a sort of a chase within, or a point series within a point series. And so that mistake did turn out to be big time. And that's why, these teams always strive to eliminate mental mistakes. And a speeding penalty is very much a mental mistake on the driver's part. And of course, Daniel's new to this series, and it's a big stage, and that happened earlier in the season. And every driver. I mean, we've talked about Jeff Gordon how many times getting speeding penalties this year, and he's getting ready to retire. He's been around so long, so it's a tough thing, and I feel bad for Daniel because, again, that's the kind of a mistake that shouldn't cost you, but it does when you're doing something like that. So you just, that's what makes this so much fun, though, is you have these little things going on, and, it is a big stage, and you want to be as perfect as you can be. And, occasionally one of these guys messes up, and, it costs you and puts somebody else in a position to win. And so that's, I'm sure he'll be much more conscious going forward of how fast he's entering and leaving pit road.
Oh, absolutely. And, I don't want to take anything away from that team at all because they've come a long way this year. Daniel did finish on the podium again, finished third, made it a 1-2-3 for JGR in that race, and won a total of $300,000 in the Dash for Cash program this year. So you want to talk about a happy 23-year-old rookie, that is one right there. And, he's progressed so much this year, in my opinion. When he started out the year, and this is nothing against the driver that he is now, Tom, but I would be a little bit nervous when he'd get up towards the front of the field because you really, and a few drivers said it, they didn't know which way he was going for a while, but he's really matured behind the wheel, and he's turned into a driver that I'm confident is going to win a race before the end of this year. He's come too close the last 8 weeks to not.
Well, you know what? I would agree with that last part, and I also agree with when it comes to, him. Of course, again, he was new, and especially, I remember Daytona was just wow. That was not a good race for him at all. The whole plate race, concept, the train idea, all of that was new to him, and he had all kinds of problems, but he has come a long way, and it's great to see that. And I think that he's proved himself worthy of being where he is, and I would assume he's going to get another full season of Xfinity coming to him next year, because I don't think there's any place else for him in the organization right away, even if they would want to take him somewhere. But Kyle Magda, the Xfinity series right now is quickly establishing itself as a points race between a couple of guys, but I'm still amazed that Chris Buescher, what a year this kid's had just to be where he is in the points with a team that otherwise has been very average.
Yeah, they've been just doing what they've been doing all year, just capitalizing on consistency, Tom. We've seen guys like Chase Elliott, Ty Dillon outpoint him in some races, and then lose it in the next. Like look at Darlington. Chris Buescher goes out there, finishes I think 6th.
Yep.
And then Chase Elliott finishes 24th. It's just like they gain that ground on him, and then like the next race, one of them slips up, and Chris Buescher gets it right back. But he has been just consistent. He's been staying up front. He has the 2 wins this season. Just doing what he has to do right now, just running top 5 every week. It's looking a lot like the Chase Elliott run last year. Once Chase got the point lead, he never lost it, ran up front every week. And you're right, Tom. That team has been average, but the trouble that Ty Dillon, Chase Elliott have had this year, Chris Buescher was finishing top 10. See, they're goofing up right now. That's all they have to do. But I think the next couple weeks here, though, we got Richmond this week. We got Chicagoland. Then we had the last standalone at Kentucky. I think these next 3 weeks will give us a better thing about what we can see, because I really think that standalone race in a few weeks here is going to be pretty interesting, Jacob.
Yeah, and let's just clarify. Chase didn't just have a bad run of his own accord. They had a mechanical failure at the tail end of that Darlington race on Saturday afternoon that it was something amiss in the motor that they were just trying to limp it to the finish and not lose any more points than they absolutely had to, which is a hard situation to be in. But it's what you got to do in a points race like this, Tom. And, as unfortunate as it is, Chris Buescher is, like Kyle said, doing exactly what Chase did last year. He's not just capitalizing on consistency. He's capitalizing on everyone else's mistakes, be it mistakes that they've caused themselves or whether it just be old-fashioned bad luck like what bit Chase Elliott Saturday night.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that Denny Hamlin no more ran the weekend than got into this week here and goes and plays a pickup basketball game and ends up doing exactly what he did one other time when he played a pickup basketball game. He tore his ACL. Now, for those of you who are listening to this show as it airs live, which is Thursday night here, and getting ready to watch the Steelers and Patriots, I just want you to think about this for a second. If one of the players on the field tonight tears an ACL, he's going to be out for a good part of the season. Denny Hamlin tore his ACL on Monday night. He's back in the car coming up this weekend. He's not missing a race. So for those of you who think race car drivers aren't athletes, think again. I don't know how he's going to do that. I don't know how he did it the last time, but they obviously are going to have to make some provisions to the car to make him more comfortable. But I gotta say two things to Denny. First of all, I really applaud your tenacity here to not miss a race with this injury. Second of all, please don't play any more pickup basketball until after the season, would you?
If I'm the coach, if I'm Coach Gibbs, that's exactly what I'm telling Denny Hamlin. I mean, everybody was already making the jokes that the coach just needed to put all four of his cup drivers in a bubble because that's two of them now that have gotten injured this season. Yeah. Denny's not going to miss a race because he's in the middle of a championship fight. But, of course, we saw what Kyle did when he came back from injury. And last time Denny had this injury, he won the next race at Martinsville. So race fans, keep that in mind as we do some business. And I believe, Tom, when we come back, we're going to spend about 2 minutes talking open wheel before we get into some of the other over the weekend Labor Day racing. So we'll talk this up after these words. You're listening to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Do you love the sound of high revving motors and the smell of burning rubber? Do you want to get your car sideways right at the ragged edge of control? If you've always wanted to try drifting or learn to improve your drifting skills, Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier motorsports facility, has the expert instructors and the specialized track to teach you how to drift and the skills necessary to drift competitively. From skid pad to open sessions, Summit Point Motorsports Park has the safe and open environment that allows drifters of all skill levels, new to intermediate, to get sideways and smoking. With a focus on safety and the skill set necessary to drift competitively, Summit Point Motorsports Park's Drift Nirvana is just the thing for you. Call for your reservation today, 304-725-8444. Or for more information, go online, summitpoint-raceway.com, or you can email them at office@bsrinc.com. Drift Nirvana, getting you sideways the right way.
This is Paul Stanley from KISS for RAD, recording artists, actors, and athletes against drunk driving. Some of us work months producing a CD, but in less time than it takes to play it, someone will be killed in an alcohol-related crash. So please don't drive when you've been drinking. Plan ahead. Arrange a designated driver. Remember, friends don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Performance Motorsports Network, your authority on motorsports of all types. Be listening for the most accurate and up-to-the-minute coverage of every motorsports activity that you enjoy on a daily basis. Be it NASCAR, be it IRL, be it Formula One, be it drag racing, be it dirt track, off-road, props, hulls, whatever. We are your source for motorsports. Performance Motorsports Network.
This is Joey Logano, driver of NASCAR number 22 Discount Tire Car. You know something? You and I aren't all that different. I drive a car, you drive a car. My car has tires, your car has tires. I may be going just a little faster than you each weekend, but we both need to keep those tires properly inflated to stay safe. So be tire smart and do your part. Check your tire pressures once a month and before every long journey.
Visit BeTiresmart.org. A message from the Rubber Manufacturers Association.
Now, back to more with Tom and the Speed 77 radio crew. It's the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Welcome back to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, combined with Motorsports Madness tonight here on PMN, 2 for the price of 1. And Tom Baker with you, along with Jacob Seelman and Kyle Magden. We are going to switch gears for a moment and talk open wheel. We normally have Joel Sebastianelli with us on Mondays, our open wheel expert, to talk Indian F1. But tonight, Jacob, not really. Here's the open one segment. There was an F1 race. Lewis Hamilton won. You got anything to add to that?
I have a little bit, but not too much. Basically, Lewis Hamilton won. Kimi Räikkönen had an absolute disaster turn into not so bad of a day after he drove his way back through the field. But Sebastian Vettel had absolutely nothing for Hamilton. Nico Rosberg wasn't in the conversation for a while, and basically the biggest drama of the whole weekend was whether Monza was going to be back on the schedule in 2016, which I don't even really want to get into that argument. There's no reason that Monza shouldn't be on the schedule next year. And Joel, our F1 expert, for those possibly uninitiated to our Monday night show, calls me after he hears these rumors and goes, "Really? They're honestly thinking about this? Who other than Bernie Ecclestone is that stupid?" So it's ridiculously ridiculous, as Joel called it. Lewis Hamilton almost lost the race because there was an investigation into tire pressures that was ultimately decided to be because of the weather instead of because of any wrongdoing by Mercedes. So, Tom, I guess you could call this Deflategate Part 2, except this time Formula One actually believed it happened because of the weather argument.
Yeah, Deflategate International style, I guess you could say. And how interesting and appropriate this week that would happen. Whatever it is. Mercedes has been the best all year anyway. Lewis is pretty much the man, and whether the tire pressures were, I don't understand, honestly, the whole argument about tire pressure, I guess, because we don't really have issues with that here in America. To me, it's just another funky F1 thing that takes away from the racing itself. And they just have rules for rules and controls for controls. And I can't keep up with all the strangeness that goes on over there. But Hamilton certainly, I don't care what anybody does. Right now there's Mercedes and there's everybody else, period, end of story. It's not fun to watch. It's not great racing. It hasn't been for most of the year. So, whether there were tire pressure issues or not, I don't think it really made a difference. Hamilton certainly had them covered. I'm interested in what's going on with the Haas F1 team for next year. And was honestly a little disappointed when I saw the article come out where he talked about the drivers, or the way that they were going to go for drivers. One of Ferrari's test drivers is going to get one of the seats, most likely, and then they're looking for an experienced driver for the other seats. So that pretty much takes Rossi out of the equation, which is terrible, because I really was hoping that he would be the choice.
Yeah, it does, and that's a shame, but I can see where Gene is going with this. He really wants a good foundation from a driving standpoint for year one of this program. So I hope that doesn't shut the door on anything for the future in potentially putting Alexander Rossi in an F1 seat over there. But at least for next year, it's not going to happen. And as far as I'm concerned, that basically is what it is, Tom. One of those deals where, okay, it doesn't work out for 16, but that doesn't mean it might not work somewhere down the road. I'm going to be patient and wait to cast judgment on that.
Well,
and see what happens, I guess.
I'm not so much casting judgment, just expressing disappointment. It may turn out to be the best thing for Gene and that team going forward for next year, but I'm just holding out hope that what this will do in the long term is take the open wheel road course stuff that we have here in the States and give it another top end direction. And that maybe now some of these kids who are running in the 2-cycle go-karts and coming into F2000 and all of that, as you know, the years start going by here, maybe it will be possible for more Americans to race in Formula One with this team. So I'm really pulling hard for it to be a when I say a success, I don't mean winning races, but just to come out of the box well and not have a lot of major issues. And so it grows quickly and creates some opportunities for some of the Americans. And by the way, for those of you listening to us, wondering about the K&N East race going on at Richmond, they just called the drivers to their cars. So apparently the rains have stopped and the track is almost dry at Richmond. And hopefully we'll get the K&N East race in this evening as planned.
Yeah, I hope we get to talk about that here in a few minutes, Tom, because there's a ridiculously tight points battle, and the two main guys that are in it, because of the rain, coincidentally start on the front row tonight. Does that not make racing even more exciting than it already was?
Well, it certainly makes it intriguing in the beginning. Who knows what will play out for the whole race, but yeah, it definitely does. And you know, you look at the guys that are really in the points battle here, and you take a kid like William Byron, who we never even expected to be anywhere near the top of the points battle. Not because we didn't think William had talent, but you don't just always come into the K&N series and have the kind of year William Byron's had.
Except that his teammate Ben Rhodes did the exact same thing last year.
Well, yeah, but I would argue that Ben was in a little bit of a different scenario. He's had a lot more racing experience than William Byron's had over the years. So I would have argued that I would say it's a much bigger surprise that William has done what he's done than Ben. Speaking of which, Ben named Graham Marshall for the upcoming race.
ARCA race, yeah, at Kentucky.
Kentucky. I laughed at that, and the first thing that came to my mind is, don't you have to be at least like 21 to be a Graham Marshal? Like that's I think he may be the youngest Graham Marshal in the history of that position.
Well, I'm not so sure I would go quite that far, Tom, but it certainly is intriguing, isn't it? And
yeah,
I'm just that's going to make that a little fun here in a couple weeks. Ben's a good old Kentucky boy, and he came out of the ARCA series, almost won that race, probably should have won that race last fall. So, it's not like he doesn't have any history with this particular event.
We need to get him back on the show before that and see if he actually has had any training in how to wave a flag instead of just going under it. That'll be
as long as he doesn't drop it.
Yeah, you don't want to drop the flag. When they say drop the green, you don't mean literally drop it on the racetrack. But back for a minute, a little bit to the K&N. I think this almost makes it more interesting. The track's going to be kind of neutral, and these kids now, again, we got to remember a lot of these drivers are, they're teenagers or early 20s. They haven't, they may have been through this a time or two, but the stage gets a lot bigger at a track like Richmond at this time of the year. Yeah. So this is going to really make that race a little bit more interesting. And, with so little of the season left really for this series, it's going to be very pivotal, I think, in the points race. And hopefully you've got some kids from the West too, like Noah Gregson and Grayson Raz that are in the show. And, it will be interesting to see how they do on a track like this, because this is obviously a complete departure from what they normally do out there. They do have a few shows in Iowa and such, but this is very different for them.
Well, yeah, and honestly, this is a big test session for these guys to get ready, give them a little more big track experience before their season-ending show at Phoenix in November. That's part of the reason why these two are coming out here to do this. So, it's a little bit of a test session, a little bit of experimentation for those guys, and good track time as well. But as far as the points battle, Tom, you're absolutely right. This is pivotal. It's key how these two perform tonight, William Byron and Scott Heckert, the top two in the championship. Tonight's pivotal, and it's pivotal that not only do you have a good race, you don't beat yourself. There are 37 cars in this field tonight. That means if either of these two have some weird sort of mechanical problem, they get into it with somebody, get into a wreck, you're losing potentially 30, 35, almost 40 points if you finish down in the 30s in a championship battle where after tonight you have one race left at Dover to be able to make it happen, and you're only going to start 36 cars there, too. You blow up, have some sort of a catastrophic disaster tonight and lose that many points, you could walk yourself right out of being able to contend for a championship.
Well,
this is key. It's key to have a clean race, solid race. Don't make any major mistakes.
Well, I agree, and this is a good warm-up for Dover as well. Again, so little time left for these guys. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this goes, and hopefully once they start the race, they'll get it in. And interestingly enough, one outsider in this field, Ryan Preece, just wanted to mention is going to be running tonight as well. I think this will be his first K&N start, I believe.
Yeah, it will be his first K&N East start, and he's driving, coincidentally, his home modified number. He's driving in the 41 car tonight, and based on all the information I've seen, it's kind of a huge collateral effort, Tom. As far as this coming together for Ryan to make the start, and it's a great tune-up for his first Cup start that is coming up in Loudon in a couple of weeks too. So there's going to be a lot to think about here, but I was really excited about it. Doug Fuller, the owner on this 41 car for Ryan Preece, and Dunleavy's Truck and Trailer, the sponsor. So, you look at that as the Fuller family helping Ryan Preece, bunch of modified guys all coming together to help make a good thing happen for a kid that really deserves it. We'll wish Ryan the best of luck along with the rest of the K&N East field as they get ready to go to green. We get ready to do this business at commercial. We're back with more of the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show here in just a moment. You're listening to the Performance Motorsports Network.
You own a performance car and you know how to drive, but you want to learn real performance driving. Well, Bunky, get that car off the street and onto the track. Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier road racing facility, located just over an hour from D.C. in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, is the place to go. And you'll find that Friday at the Track is going to give you what you need. For less than a monthly car payment, you can attend this regularly scheduled one-day instructional event in your street car on one of Summit Point's 3 world-class road racing circuits. You'll receive classroom instruction, skid pad instruction in their cars, including front and rear skid control, and 4 20-minute in-your-car instructional sessions from a professional instructor. Have fun, go fast, and really learn how to drive. Call 304-725-8444 for class schedules and details. That's 304-725-8444. Friday at the Track at Summit Point Motorsports Park.
Travel is part of the American way of life.
When we're on vacation, we keep an eye out for anything that looks out of place.
Miss your bag.
When we travel from city to city, we pay attention to our surroundings.
Everyone plays a role in keeping our community safe.
Whether you're traveling for business or pleasure, be aware of your surroundings. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Hi, this is Ozzy Osbourne. For many years, I've had a drink problem, and I'm trying to battle that problem every single day. But one thing I don't drive my car when I'm drinking. I get someone to drive me. Do not drink and drive. It's the stupidest thing. If you drink, just don't drive. Not only are you going to hurt yourself, you may hurt some other person, and you wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you?
A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
And now, back to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show with Speed 77 Radio's most follically challenged host, Tom Baker.
I'll be even more follically challenged tomorrow morning when I get a haircut. All 5 of them. You're listening to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, combined with Motorsports Madness this week here on PMN. 2 shows for the price of 1. Hope you're enjoying it. Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, and Kyle Magna talking all kinds of racing with you. And, of course, we were talking about the K&N East segment before our last break, a K&N East race that's coming up here in just a moment at Richmond. The engines have been fired, and not only is K&N East a tight points battle, Jacob, but K&N West has their own tight points battle. And, of course, as we mentioned in the last segment, a couple of their guys are over here running the K&N East race, but they've got to be thinking about K&N West because there's some heavy-duty stuff going on out there with regard to the potential for a shuffle in points if you have a bad race. Not as many cars in the field as there are usually in the East Series. So what I'm saying is going to be a little harder for those who are behind a little bit to make up the points, but still very possible and very close going down to the wire.
Oh, very true. And to compound this even more, one of the kids that we talked about in the last segment is the K&N West points leader once again. Noah Gregson, who's over here running in Richmond tonight, is the leader of the K&N West standings by virtue of his win in Meridian, Idaho on Saturday afternoon of this past weekend, led a vast majority of the 208 laps at that quarter-mile racetrack to pick up the victory, his second of the season, and it gives him the points lead by 2 points over Chris Eggleston. Ryan Partridge, Grayson Raz still in the fight. Raz is fourth, 16 points back. This is really now a four-man fight, rather. Grayson's got an outside shot at it, but 3 guys within 8 points. Eggleston 2 back, and we're going to 2 tracks to round out the K&N West schedule that I'm of an opinion that you really are going to need to go through a guy like Chris Eggleston in order to win this championship. As much as I think Noah has come so far this season, I'm not convinced that Roseville and Phoenix are going to suit his driving style quite as well as we've seen a couple of these other tracks this season. Tucson and Meridian, they're very tight, very bull ring type tracks. Roseville's a 3rd mile, but it's wider. It's got some more room. You don't do as much of the beating and banging at that racetrack as you do at some of these other racetracks. So I think Eggleston may have the edge going into these final 2 races. The problem is, Tom, you've got over a month between both of them. The next race for the West Series, October 17th at Roseville, and then the November 12th finale at Phoenix during the second-to-last race of the Sprint Cup Championship. So, like you said, a lot to be decided still in the West. These West guys trying to get some track time over here in the East. Don't know if either one of them are going to try to run Dover here in a couple of weeks. Maybe use that as a preview of Phoenix as well, because it's a mile track. It's just got more banking than Phoenix does. We'll just have to see. Really interesting, though, and, I like the fact that we've got Noah as tightly entrenched in this battle as we do.
Well, I was going to say that I don't necessarily want to say that I think the 2 bigger tracks disadvantage Noah at all. I think that what he's doing right now tonight, Richmond's 3/4 of a mile. There's not that much of a difference. Phoenix, obviously, a much different style of track and a much flatter track, etc. I don't know that it really creates a disadvantage. I think Noah, the biggest thing for him is just going to be to keep his composure and to not let the overall stage get too big for him. It's very, people forget there's a mental side to this sport. When you're as young as Noah is, and you've kind of burst onto the scene this year in K&M West, and you're contending for a championship at that level, even though it's just a regional series. For him, it's a huge series. And so people forget that there's a mental side to this. And, I think the big thing for him is just going to be to keep his composure and not make any mistakes. It's a common theme that we seem to be talking about a lot tonight, but I think that he's capable of winning the championship. And I think he's as capable of winning any of the races that are left as anyone else is. But I think the key, Jacob, is just going to be he's got to not let the stage get too big for him. And I think tonight's going to be a good step toward that. And if he can run Dover next week, the same, because obviously those are bigger tracks, and the kids from out west like him and like Grayson need that experience.
Yeah, and let's not get too far ahead of ourselves on the calendar. We don't want to rush through the first 2 rounds of the chase to get to Dover just yet, because I'm kind of excited.
Next week, sorry. Yeah. Next race is what I meant for them.
I knew what you meant. Anyway, it's we're inside your head. We get these things. But anyway.
Scary place to be.
I want to see him have a shot at the championship. I really, really do. It's so tight right now. It's going to be very interesting to see how these next couple races shake out. And, we've got 2 races left, including tonight for the East Series, but 2 races left overall for both series. So the championships, luckily, still very much in question, not over yet. We're going to have to wait and see how everything plays out. One final note on the West that I want to make real quick, Tom, before we talk a little bit of straight liner action, believe it or not, is Dylan Capello, the defending Lucas Oil Modified Series champion, basically the NASCAR Tour out west, just not sanctioned by NASCAR, is going to be making his K&M West debut at Roseville, the All-American Speedway, in October, driving for Johnny Borneman.
Interesting. Okay. I did not hear that. That's good. I like seeing that because, again, that's a series that, we hardly ever talk about, and I think it kind of gets lost in the shuffle out there. I don't really think it's a series that gets a lot of play over here in the East Coast, but it's a very competitive series. Dylan, being able to make his first start at Roseville. We watched Christian Payhud last year make his first start at Roseville for Bill McAnally. And he won everything. Literally, won testing, won practice, won qualifying, and won the race. So Roseville's a track that you said it right earlier. It's only a third mile. So you say, well, that's a tight bull ring, but it's very wide. So it drives like a 3/8 mile, more so than some of the other quarter miles that the series runs do. So it's a type of track where Dylan, coming out of a modified car, I would think if he's going to make his first start, that would be a nice, I want to say safe track to do it on, just because it is wide. And if you're going to make a mistake, you got some room to save it, especially if you're on the top. So interesting. That's surprising, but I'm glad to hear that. And I think he'll have a chance to do very well there. That's good equipment.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, Johnny Borneman's no slouch, never has been on the K&M West Series. So, we'll wait and see. We got a month before it starts to shake out. I want to talk some straight liner action for a minute, Tom, because we talk about big races, big weekends. Labor Day is one of those, and the U.S. Nationals is the biggest drag racing event in the world, and NHRA concludes their regular season there, gets ready to go into their version of the chase. They call it the countdown. 6 races that kicks off in our neck of the woods in Charlotte in a couple of weeks' time. But the U.S. Nationals, last year we had 4 first-time winners of the event. This year we also had 4 first-time winners of the event. Couple of big stories. Number one, Jack Beckman is still the new king of funny car. He won both the Traxxas Nitro Shootout bonus event that paid him $100,000 right into his pocket. He also won his first U.S. Nationals title for Don Schumacher Racing, and just obliterated the field just about. 21st win of his career, and it was a whole shot victory over Robert Hight, which is not something that you usually do. Almost nobody beats Robert Hight off the Christmas tree. So Beckman on top in funny car. Morgan Lucas, Tom, not even running a full schedule anymore, comes back and blows the top fuel field away. He beats guys like Dave Connolly in the final. He beat his teammate Richie Crampton, who's been shocking the world with a couple of wins this year. And, you know, when you consider that neither Antron Brown nor Tony Schumacher made it to the final, a little bit shocking, especially considering that Schumacher's an 8-time winner at the U.S. Nationals. And then consider Erica Enders, who we've watched quite extensively this year, Tom, in Pro Stock, picking up a win. Jerry Savoy gets it in Pro Stock Motorcycle. And here was the big story of the weekend. Courtney Force misses the countdown for the championship in funny car. Now, if you'd have told me that that would have happened when we kicked off the season at Pomona in February, I'd have bet you $1 million that you were crazy.
Yeah. Wow. It is a surprise. I didn't have the chance to zero in too much on the NHRA stuff from over the weekend, and that is definitely a surprise. You know, you always expect to see the forces in the finals there, and really, that is shocking, quite honestly. But, you know, it goes to show the level of competition in the NHRA when you can have that scenario. And I don't think that the competition has been, I think this year has been as good as it's ever been, and maybe better than it has been in a lot of the different divisions in the past 5 to 10 years. I mean, there are just so many good cars and good drivers across the board this year. It's hard to keep track of. And really, when someone misses a final, it's not always because they had a bad day. It's just others had a great day.
Yeah. And you know, the U.S. Nationals was 50% more points than any other race in the season, but Courtney still had to make it all the way to the final once she knocked out Alexis DeJoria to get that final spot. She just didn't do it. She's had a very, very inconsistent season. So, you know, she misses the countdown and won't race for a championship this year. She'll just go out to try to play spoiler in the final 6 races. Congratulations, though, to the winners of the U.S. Nationals. Again, NHRA countdown kicks off not this coming weekend, but next weekend right here in good old Charlotte, North Carolina at ZMAX Dragway. When we come back, we'll talk dirt. And I also want to hit on before we take a breath for just a moment that Ryan Preece is the biggest story of the K&M Pro Series East race so far. 35th, Tom, to 20th in just 15 laps. He's picking them off 1 car per lap and really impressing a lot of people in that Chevrolet. So around the turn, we talk dirt with Steve Ovens right here on the Performance Motorsports Network, the voice of motorsports.
We're growing like crazy and need account reps who know their way around agencies, the internet, and social media. Got connections? Or do you know how to get to the decision makers? Are you fearless? We need you. Internet radio, or as we call it, wireless mobile radio, is rapidly becoming the place to be with almost limitless income potential. So contact us to get involved with the fastest growing professionally produced group of internet radio stations in the world. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-749-0444. That's 717-749-0444. Or you can email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. You want to ask for Sue.
Okay, so Sarah, I'm dropping you off at Emily's?
Yep.
And Josh, you're going to?
Soccer, Dad. Soccer practice.
Right. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let you know when I pick you both up, I'll be wearing my short shorts.
What? No!
Yep, and my dorky dad hat, and I'm gonna do my dad dance for all your friends. They'll love it!
Seriously? Why?
Because I like my short shorts. Of course, I could be talked out of it if you guys would just buckle up your seatbelts without giving me a hard time.
It's important to get your kids to buckle up for safety, no matter what it takes. And sometimes, all it takes is your parental powers of persuasion.
Okay, we're buckling up. See, all buckled.
Good choice. I'll just have to do my dad dance at dinner time.
What?
No!
Do what you have to make sure your kids are wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.
If you're a gearhead and you just can't get enough of your favorite motorsports on that channel on the cable, or you look at that Guy network and you just go, what does that have to do with me? We have the answer. Performance Motorsports Network. Right here on the internet. The best cruising tunes, the best in motorsports programming, and the best shows. We have opinionated hosts, and we like it that way. If you want to get involved, if you want to bench race, be listening for information coming up soon right here on this channel, the Performance Motorsports Network, your source for motorsports. Let's go back to steel and aluminum stock cars and supplying the SRIs with Race Chaser Online Senior Editor Tom Baker and the Speed 77 Radio Cast.
Steele, what? That was just awful.
Well, that's close enough. I don't care.
Welcome back to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Report, combined with Motorsports Madness here tonight on Performance Motorsports Network, the voice of motorsports. We're not stealing stock cars. We are promoting them. It is the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, but Bob will get it right eventually. Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, Kyle Magda around the round table and continuing to monitor K&M Pro Series East. Had a caution, but with William Byron out front. But man, Jacob, you mentioned it before the break. Ryan Preece is on a roll earlier in this race, averaging 1 car passed per lap. That's pretty unbelievable, especially when you consider that Ryan, although he's had, a start or two on some bigger tracks, it's not as if he's Kyle Busch. I mean, he's not a ringer.
Right.
This is a very, very good early drive for him. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep this up.
Yeah, it really will be, and we'll keep monitoring it. Right now, though, as we go into the second half of our show, we've kind of taken the cross flags here, and that means we get to talk a little dirt from over the weekend and bring in one of our favorite Monday night hosts to talk dirt with us. Steve Ovens on the line now, and Steve-O, I'm going to talk the same subject we always talk about, but with a lot more hoopla tonight, because Donnie Schatz on Monday night did something only 2 other drivers in the history of the sport have ever done. He went up the road to Washington State. He wins at Grays Harbor Raceway. That win is number 200 of his World of Outlaws career. The first one came at Cottage Grove Speedway in Oregon, where the series was last night. What does Schatzy do? He wins 201. So from that first win to the 201st win, with 199 in between, this man is unbeatable right now.
Yeah, well, certainly on his way to what we thought might be, or at least Clint Miller originally thought might be 35 wins this season. And there were so many wins that were appropriate this weekend. Of course, first getting win number 200 at Grays Harbor, out on the West Coast, where he ended up getting his first Outlaws victory, and then goes to the track here just a couple of days later to the track that he got his first Outlaw win at Cottage Grove, gets the win there. Just adds to what's been such an impressive season this far. We keep saying week after week after week, how much more can this team do? And every single weekend they go out and show us just how much more they can do. And I'm honestly, we're watching greatness right now. And you can be a Donnie fan. You can choose to be in the line of Donnie haters, but at the same time, he's one of these guys right now that you hear it all the time. You may not like him, you may not root for him, but you got to respect him. And what I think is even more important, Jacob, is just not only respecting what they're doing right now, but appreciating what they're doing, because we're watching history be written right before our eyes. And it has just been a blast watching how good these guys have been. I mean, they're just scary, scary good right now.
They really are, and it made me start doing the numbers last night, Steve. Donnie's 38 years old this year, so you got to figure he's got at least 10 years, maybe 12 or 15 left in him. And I really started to think hard about this, because if he keeps winning races at the clip that he's winning races at, not only will he be able to probably in the next couple of years top Sammy Swindell's mark at 294, a mark that I previously thought may never be touched. But boy, he could potentially start even putting the King's record in a little bit of jeopardy. Steve's got 577 victories in his Outlaws career, but Donnie's averaging between 26 and 30 races a year over the last 2 years that he's won now. You stop and consider, if he can keep doing this the way he's doing it, that's not only the wins record, but that's potentially a championship record in jeopardy, depending on how long he wants to go. I mean, there's a lot of things that Steve Kinser has done that if Donnie keeps performing like this, you got to wonder how high the man can climb.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, the thing about it is although, you know, on one hand, maybe Steve's numbers are going to be a little bit unattainable for him, I'll tell you, the fact that Sammy Swindell, I mean, I fully expect that Donnie will catch Sammy at some point here as we go over the next couple of years of his career. But the thing about Sammy is Sammy's kind of found himself back in a role where he's with a fairly competitive team, and Sammy could still continue to add to his numbers. They just pulled down a big win at the Jackson Nationals this past weekend, a $25,000 victory. So you look at that and you say, well, you know, we think Donnie's going to catch Sammy for sure, but although he may be doing that, I think Sammy may be padding his numbers a little bit, running with this team, kind of a annex of the CJB Motorsports team that fields an entry for Paul McMahon. And, you know, although we expect him to catch Sammy and surpass him at some point, Sammy's not going down without a fight here.
No, he's not, but my opinion right now is winning an FVP National Sprint League main event is very, very, very different than going and winning in the field with the World of Outlaws, and Sammy just hasn't proven that with this CJB team he's been able to do that just yet. You know, it's not over by any stretch, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see exactly how this shakes out. You know, Sammy's, I think, gotten a little bit of his old spark back for sure, but I'm not convinced that it's going to put him back in Outlaws victory lane just like that, Steve, although I was impressed to see him sweep the Jackson Nationals, because this is a guy who is in a competitive car again. We know hasn't lost any of his fire and put away almost $35,000 over the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest with you, I thought it was really a feel-good victory over the weekend, too, because of everything that is going on with Kevin right now. And you know, everybody in the dirt world has been keeping Kevin in their thoughts and prayers as he continues to recover. I heard Sammy speak earlier this week, you know, regarding Kevin's condition, and you know, right now that's kind of at a standstill because, you know, it's going to take at minimum, you know, 3 to 6 months for you know, and maybe even longer for the swelling around Kevin's spinal cord to reduce, and then see what you have, you know, what you're working with as far as what kind of recovery they could, you know, shoot for and how long that would take. You know, so when you consider that Sammy's got all of that on his mind, plus trying to get another team that, you know, these guys basically show up with a car in the back of a trailer and, you know, and a couple of extra wings, and they operate with all the tools and everything out of the Paul McMahon trailer. Or the event that they were at this past weekend with the National Sprint League, you know, they didn't have all of that at their disposal because, you know, McMahon is outrunning with the World of Outlaws. So these guys, show up, and they ended up winning a race that they had to borrow a mule just to push the sprint car around and carry parts on. So when you consider all of that, I think that takes that victory up even a notch further.
Yeah, I really do. And it was just good to see Sammy smiling and at the racetrack again. So, all good things there, and all things that I think we look forward to seeing more of in the future, Steve. I want to touch on the Super Dirt Car Series really quickly because they've had some action of their own going on over the course of the past 7 to 10 days. And, exciting to see that points battle get ready to shake down. Stuart Friesen's been on a roll in just about everything he's done lately. Is there anything stopping the Fries?
Not really, and I'll be honest with you, those guys are red hot right now. I've been working on a piece that's almost finished on Stuart Friesen because I the way I've termed it is he is truly using a hybrid method right now to win races, and that's exactly what they've been doing. In a stretch of 5 days, they won almost $50,000 racing dirt modifieds, and he actually won Sunday night at Utica Rome in his wife Jessica's sprint car. And the thing is yes, he's driving for 4 different car owners right now, but by doing that, every time those guys show up to the track, they're coming out with a fresh piece. And when you can do that every single time you come out, that takes your chances of winning and just increases it exponentially. And all of these teams have superior equipment. And here's the other part: they're all set up very similar. They're all TO chassis, and that Friesen is a TO guy. They're going to do everything that they can to keep Stewart and TO in victory lane. But the hybrid method these guys are using is just phenomenal. But interesting to note, I'm not sure that they're actually going to be at all of the Dirt Series races this weekend. I know that their Friday and Saturday plans included a race at Grandview, and I believe another race here in this Thunder Mountain for the Short Track Super Series on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually end up making the trip up north as the Dirt Car Series heads to Quebec.
Yeah, it really will be. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, Steve. And always love having you on the show. Different to have you on a Thursday, but we'll continue watching the Outlaws. They trek to California this weekend for the Gold Cup, and that's an event Donnie Schatz has been good at over the years. Time to see if he can win 2 more.
Well, at this point, I mean, you have to go into every weekend and say, okay, they got 2 races this weekend. I give Donnie 1 out of 2. I mean, if he can keep doing 1 out of 2, we're going to hit 35 before we know it.
Well, he's got to go 7 of 17 for the rest of the year, so your math is spot on, Steve. We'll plan on talking to you here coming up in a couple of days on Motorsports Madness, and then I know you're back with Turn 5 Live next week, Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Always good to have you on.
Absolutely. Next week we'll be coming to you from the Steel City Studios, so can't wait.
All right, that's Steve Ovens. We go to break. We come back with more conversation right after this. You are listening to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Here's an important message from RAD and this station.
Hi, this is Bob Sheehan from Blues Traveler for RAD, recording artists against drunk driving. I like to party just as much as the next guy, maybe even more, but the one thing I won't do after I've had a few is get in the car and drive. Don't blow it. Always choose a designated driver. Remember, music lives, and so should you.
Motorsports sales professionals. Performance Motorsports is looking to build a team of experienced media sales professionals to represent our programming to the industry's top companies, magazines, and racing series. If you have motorsports sales or marketing experience, know how to work with agencies, understand social media, and are incredibly creative when it comes to working with clients and promotions, then we want to hear from you. Top performers are richly rewarded. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-7 717-749-0444. That's 717-749-0444, or email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. You want to ask for Sue.
You are a waste. A loser. Everyone hates you. Why don't you just stay in your car and keep driving? I'm serious. Drive until you run out of gas and get out of your car and walk until you find someone who doesn't think you're dumber than bricks. Could take a while, but at least all that walking might burn a couple of calories.
You may not witness bullying like this every day. Your kids do. They want to help, but they don't know how. Visit stopbullying.gov to learn safe, simple ways your child can help stop bullying. Be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
You own a performance car and you know how to drive, but you want to learn real performance driving. Well, Bunky, get that car off the street and onto the track. Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier road racing facility, located just over an hour from D.C. in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, is the place to go. And you'll find that Friday at the Track is going to give you what you need. For less than a monthly car payment, you can attend this regularly scheduled one-day instructional event in your street car on one of Summit Point's 3 world-class road racing circuits. You'll receive classroom instruction, skid pad instruction in their cars, including front and rear skid control, and 4 20-minute in-your-car instructional sessions from a professional instructor. Have fun, go fast, and really learn how to drive. Call 304-725-8444 for class schedules and details. That's 304-725-8444. Friday at the Track at Summit Point Motorsports Park. Now back to Speed 77 Radio, Stock Car Steel, SRI Motorsports Show, and more Thursday night race talk. Here's your host, Tom Baker.
Welcome back to the Stock Car Steel SMI Motorsports Show, combining itself tonight with Motorsports Madness, our usual Monday race show here on a Thursday, because, of course, this past Monday being Labor Day, we did not have a live show on that night, so kind of combining topics here on a Thursday. And with that, we sort of circle back to where I was and Kyle was soon to be last Thursday night up in Oswego for coverage of the 59th annual Budweiser International Classic weekend, which we were on hand all weekend long. And we've got Oswego Speedway's PR director, Dan Kapazinski, joining us to kind of rehash that. And Danny K, the one thing that really seemed to be prevalent all weekend long is if you were in the lead in any of the features, you didn't want to be.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, you know, Tom, you start right from Friday night with the ROC modified race straight up to the Classic on Sunday. You're exactly right. You definitely did not want to be a leader. There were dramatic finishes all weekend long, and honestly, that's kind of been the storyline of the entire season at Oswego. We've had lots of dramatic finishes, and it's been difficult to even be a point leader at Oswego this season. Guys have run into issues, but the weekend was phenomenal, top to bottom, straight from Friday right on to Sunday.
It really was. Let's just kind of get into this a little bit and go through each race, and then we can come back and hit some of the inner stories from the events. Friday night, of course, the big thing that was going on, the main event was the ROC modified event, and Andy Jankowiak, I mean, you just gotta love it. This is a guy that's basically one race car, one motor kind of guy, smaller trailer, no frills, just shows up, gets in the car, and drives his arse off. And he certainly did that after his pit stop on Friday night, Dan.
Well, yeah, and the interesting thing was, too, is he kind of short ran his heat race also. He only ran 3 laps in his heat race to try and, kind of save his right rear tire a little bit, because the ROC cars were back on Hoosier tires for the first time in at least 2 years, I think, for Classic weekend. So there was a lot of uncertainty as far as to how the pit strategy was going to play out. Andy tried to kind of short run the heat race, still ended up making a pit stop. But that kid is he's a wheel man. He wins in anything he runs. He's won in TQ Midgets indoors. He even ran a go-kart at Oswego Kartway about a year and a half or so ago. But Andy is he's on the wheel. I guess he won at Oswego Friday, and then I believe he went down to Hickory, down your guys' way, and won over the weekend as well. It's nice to see Andy J come in. And like you said, with, not necessarily the equipment that everybody else has, but a lot of passion, a lot of work, and the kid drives hard. There's no doubt about it.
He sure does. That was a good race. I mean, there were a lot of cautions, but, a lot of guys tried their hand at being up front, but the one that succeeded was Andy Jankowiak at the end. And that was a big win and kind of set the tone, I think, a little bit for the upset specials that were to come on Saturday, particularly in the SBS race, Small Block Super Modified Classic. Brian Haynes shows up one time in a car that he's not used to driving. It was his brother's car, no paint on the thing. It's a primer colored car. Talk about no frills. He shows up, goes out, gets in the race, manages to run between about 5th and 7th, 5th and 8th the entire event, and just takes advantage of every leader in front of him's misfortune and ends up maybe with the biggest upset win in the history of that event at Oswego.
Yeah, I would say so. It was kind of survival of the fittest on Saturday night for that class. I think Brian started all the way back in probably 13th or 14th.
Yeah.
And to his credit, to get to 5th or 7th, he drove his way to that point. He made some moves early on. He put himself in position to take advantage of essentially the leader, both pairs of leaders taking themselves out on different occasions, and then Dalton Doyle, unfortunately having a flat left front tire, suffered from one of those accidents that he really had nothing to do with. And Brian was in the right place at the right time. And, that's part of the deal in an endurance event. 75 laps is by far the longest amount of laps that those cars will run during a season at Oswego, and he played it smart. He's been at Oswego for quite a few years. I think he's only run one full-time season, but he's a smart kid. He lives down in Maryland, does a lot of work down there, comes up only once or twice a year to run at Oswego. Another story of a guy that grew up, around this area that has a passion for Oswego Speedway and comes back once a year. And, everybody was so happy to see, Brian Haynes and his brother Brad get to victory lane. It was a great story.
I think even some of the leaders who had the misfortune to either crash or break or whatever before Brian were happy to see Brian win. It was a really interesting race. Then we get to the ISMA Super Modified show on Saturday night. Now, I don't know that Timmy J winning an ISMA Classic at Oswego is an upset, but the way that he did it certainly was dramatic. Again, another late race pass in traffic of Mike Lichty, which was similar to what happened when he won it the last time in 2012.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Matt Hirschman out in front of the modified race, on Friday night when Andy J won. It's not often that Matt Hirschman, it's not often that Mike Lichty get passed while they're leading at Oswego. And Timmy J was able to pull that off. That's his third win in the ISMA Super Nationals on Classic Weekend for his third different car owner. We got the win this past week for Howie Lane, but the ISMA Super Series does not use the passing flag. It's a rule that they've had for quite a few years, and it came down to the end there, and lap traffic played a part. And Mike Lichty has won races at Oswego using traffic, and now he's lost one using traffic. It kind of got him shoved up the racetrack a little bit, and Timmy J was there to take advantage.
And Joey Bailey picking up the win in the TQ Midget Classic on Saturday night as well. In another case of where a couple of the leaders had misfortune, and he was right there to take advantage and kind of inherit the win. And then we get to Sunday. Now, the Classic race on Sunday, Dan, a lot of us, we weren't sure what we were going to get. I mean, a lot of talk about more pit stops for tires because, they weren't sure. And, I think what we got was more of an old-fashioned Classic race for a while anyway. I mean, Mike Barnes kind of pulled away, but you had good racing behind him, and then they caught him, and Danzer got by him, and it was another deal where you didn't want to be the leader. First, Danzer gets by Barnes, and then spins trying to pass a slower car, and then Otto Sitterly inherits the lead, drives away for the longest time. You think, well, it's going to be another Otto runaway, and then he does the exact same thing that Danzer did around the same exact car, spins himself out, and all of a sudden you got to race to the finish, and Bob Bong comes out of nowhere. It seemed like he was 8th place with like 25 laps left, and he just drove through the field, saved his car, and was there at the end when he needed to be.
Yeah, I remember talking to you, about a week and a half or so ago, Tom, and we were questioning, if guys were going to be making pit stops. A lot of guys were having issues, keeping the left rear tires on the car. And like you said, as it turned out, there was the same cast and characters made stops. Brandon Bellinger stopped, Pat Lavery stopped, but the leaders, they stuck it out. And, like you said, David had a bit of an issue in traffic. Otto had an issue in traffic and lost the handle. And then it comes down to Bob Bond running a Nolan Swift, Greg Furlong type race. He sits, I think he was as far back as 14th or 15th in the grid at one point. He was 6th with 20 laps to go. But when it came down to it in the last 10 laps, we actually went into overtime, had a green, white checkered finish. Bob had more car than everybody else. And you got to give credit to Michael Barnes. I mean, he literally drove the wheels off that car, in the last 10 laps on the green, white checkered. We talked to him afterwards. He said, I was brake checking. I was driving things sideways down the straightaways. He was doing everything he could. But he knew he was sort of a lame duck there at the end of the race. And Bob was able to take advantage for his third Classic win in 6 years.
Yeah, really, you got to give credit to Bob and the crew. I mean, that's it's still been since 2009. We've had 2 Classic winners. It's either been Bobby Bond or Otto Sitterly. Yeah, no kidding. Actually, I didn't really think about that at first. And then my mother, of all people, came up to me. She goes, geez, the same 2 guys have won the last 7 years. And geez, Mom, you're right. Good job. Yeah.
So, it's just, it's a testament to what Bob and Otto have been able to put together. A lot of people think, that the Classic is pretty much Otto Sitterly's race to win. And, maybe it's starting to kind of go back the other way. I mean, Bob literally showed everybody the textbook way to run that Classic. I mean, I was thinking about it. You've got Barnes and Danzer up on the front row, and Barnes, he wants to get out front and set the pace, but it's almost like a kiss of death to get out front because, he was trying to run as slow as he could, and at the end of the day, even that 17.7, 17.8 second pace just didn't really prove to be enough at the end.
No, he told me that too. He said, I was trying to go as slow as I could. I said, well, you didn't go slow enough because Bond was about 12 spots behind you and he passed you at the end. So
yeah, exactly. It's so tough.
It is.
You got to remember for the people that don't quite understand, that are used to more stock car type racing, there's no two-way radios or any sort of communication in these cars. So, these guys get out front and they're running what they think is the pace they need to run. They can't really, they don't have a great bearing on where the rest of the field is around them, and it's really grassroots, and they're trying to do the best they can. But Bob Bond played it perfect on Sunday.
Yeah, he really did. He really did. It was a great weekend, perfect weather. Looked like the crowd on Sunday was the biggest Classic crowd we've had in a while, which is great. Good racing, safe racing all weekend pretty much. So great drive for Joey Payton, too, in the Strong Racing 99, coming from deep in the pack and finishing third, almost had second at the end. Got to give him some credit as well. Dan, before we get you out of here, about 20 seconds or so, you got the Fall Championship coming up next Saturday. Looking forward to coming up for that one.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to be the Bond and Sitterly show again. Bob's got I think about a 12.5-point lead on Otto. It's going to be a 75-lap feature, 3,000 to win. So keep an eye on the 47 and the 7 next week. It should be a shootout.
Should be fun. Supers and small blocks championships on the line at Oswego next Saturday night. Danny Kapazinski, thanks for being with us. OswegoSpeedway.com if you want to get more information about the Fast 5/8 of a mile. When we come back, we are going to continue talking motorsports, and we'll update you on Richmond K&N as well. We'll be back with more in just a moment. You're listening to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Motorsports sales professionals. Performance Motorsports is looking to build a team of experienced media sales professionals to represent our programming to the industry's top companies, magazines, and racing series. If you have motorsports sales or marketing experience, know how to work with agencies, understand social media, and are incredibly creative when it comes to working with clients and promotions, then we want to hear from you. Top performers are richly rewarded. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-749-0444. That's 717-749-0444, or email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. You want to ask for Sue.
Every 30 minutes, another innocent person is killed due to a drunk driver.
My best friend. My brother. My poor grandchild.
My sister.
My father. My husband.
My mom. My mommy.
Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around
Stop these tragedies before they happen. Don't drink and drive.
Do you love the sound of high revving motors and the smell of burning rubber? Do you want to get your car sideways right at the ragged edge of control? If you've always wanted to try drifting or learn to improve your drifting skills, Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier motorsports facility, has the expert instructors and the specialized track to teach you how to drift and the skills necessary to drift competitively. From skid pad to open sessions, Summit Point Motorsports Park has the safe and open environment that allows drifters of all skill levels, new to intermediate, to get sideways and smoking. With a focus on safety and the skill set necessary to drift competitively, Summit Point Motorsports Park's Drift Nirvana is just the thing for you. Call for your reservation today, 304-725-8444. Or for more information, go online, summitpoint-raceway.com, or you can email them at office@bsrinc.com. Drift Nirvana, getting you sideways the right way.
If you own a gun, you have a full-time responsibility. When you aren't using it, be sure it can't get into the hands of curious children, troubled teenagers, a thief, or anyone else who might misuse it. Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearms storage safety, visit ncpc.org. This message brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the Ad Council.
Here we go with more of the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Welcome back to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, combined with Motorsports Madness for this week. Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, Kyle Magda, all around the proverbial round table here for a discussion of motorsports, all things tonight. Here on the Thursday night, we've covered a lot of ground, and we're going to cover a lot of more ground in this segment. We've got Hunter Smith joining us now. Hunter is normally with us on most Monday nights whenever there is a Pirelli World Challenge race that has happened over the weekend. But tonight we're gonna step him up a little bit and make him talk Coma Unwind Modified Madness series as well. Hunter, you were on hand. We mentioned earlier with Danny Kaye that Andy Jankowiak not only won on Friday night in the Race of Champions Modified Classic at Oswego Speedway up in New York, but then came down south here to Hickory Motor Speedway on Monday and went out and beat the best that Southern Modified Racing has to offer in the Coma Unwind event. You were there working with Jeremy Mayfield. Got to be an extraordinary victory for Andy J, because that Coma series, even on a normal day, maybe doesn't have great quantity, but it has awesome quality. And on this day, there were 27 cars.
Yeah, I know walking through the gate in the morning, I pretty much stuck by the J2 crew, but I did walk down pit road a little bit and got to see some of the competition as any good team member would do, right? So I went down the line, and a lot of good cars there. Cale Gale was there. It was his first start of the Coma season, so he was out there with his Gale Force car. It was a family car. And Andy J, I'm going to stick to calling him Andy J. I'm glad someone else called him that, because his last name confuses the heck out of me sometimes. Jan Kowiak. I have enough time with these Italian names and stuff in Pirelli, so I'm going to stick to Andy J. That's easy for me. But
he likes it.
So Andy, he drove a phenomenal race. I tell you what, during the race, I was spotting for Jeremy Mayfield, so my eyes were most of the time directed at him. But sometimes I got to switch over and watch some of the other guys that were running up front. Jeremy was running up front, but at the same time, Andy J, Cale Gale, Burt Myers was up there. Jason was running well too, until a little bit of misfortune for him. But it was a great race. There were a lot of cautions. We even had a red flag and a big fight on pit road between the Zach Brewer crew and Calabrese. But it was it was a fantastic race. We had a good time with it. I don't know. I think the cops won once they pulled the tasers out. I think I'm going to say that they were the winners of the fights, but it was a good race. It was an awesome night to have on Labor Day.
Okay, modifieds and fights. This seems like, I mean, you don't say it's commonplace because it seems like we've started to lose that, Hunter, but that's a little bit of what modified racing was founded on way back when. I hate it, but in a way I'm kind of happy that we finally have a little controversy to talk about, because it's just one of those situations where you think about it and, these guys are so used to beating and banging on the track, but up until recently, we got used to seeing these guys beating and banging a little bit off the track too. So like I said, I hate it, but as much as I hate it, it's nice for the fans because they get a little bit of an extra show.
Yeah, they had, like I said, they had quite the show. And Burt Myers, he's been dominating the series all year. He's only got one finish outside the top 3, and that was at Kingsport, where he finished 8th. But Burt Myers finished 3rd, and it was great because, like I said earlier, Cale Gale was in his first start of the season, and Andy J was in his second start of the season in the Coma race, but pulled out a miraculous win. Like, no one went into this race expecting him. So controversy, some first-time winners, some new names, and it was a great race. A lot of beating and banging, a lot of soul out on the racetrack. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, a lot of fun, and just as much fun as the modifieds were, because Andy J goes and gets another victory, first career Coma Series win for him. But Hunter, we get to go road course racing this weekend, one of your specialties, and get to talk a little Pirelli World Challenge because it's championship weekend.
It is championship weekend. I am super excited. Just got done with practices today. Every class did go out for practice today. TCA practice was led by Pat Seguin. We had some other guys up there, Ernie Francis Jr. and TC. Joey Jordan led TCB. And I'll tell you what, in TCB, my favorite story so far this weekend, it's only been a day, but Tom O'Gorman was second fastest in TCB practice. Tom O'Gorman showed up with an open trailer and his Honda Fit on the back of his truck, pulling by the back of his truck. It's a fantastic story. I want to see this guy do well. So hopefully he has a good weekend. Just common names in GTS. Mark Wilkins, he led GTS practice. Then you had GTC. I'll give you one guess as to who led GTC practice there, Jake.
Colin Thompson?
Oh, yes, it was. He led practice. He already clinched a championship. We have a couple of championships clinched already. GTC, Colin Thompson took it. And in GTA, Frank Montecalvo has already been named your champion, so he gets to race with a little less pressure this week. Every other class, though, they're pretty much in a dogfight. In GT, you got Ryan Dial, you got Olivier Beretta, Johnny O'Connell. They're all going for championships. TCA, it's anyone's race. TCB, it's pretty much Johan Schwartz and Glenn Nixon. And TC, Ernie Francis Jr. is up there. It's going to be a dogfight in a couple spots, and they only got one race to do it, except for the TC classes. They have 3 races, but it's going to be a great weekend. I love Laguna Seca to see how they get through the corkscrew this weekend, and hopefully everybody keeps their tires to each other, and it's a good race.
Oh, yeah. Laguna Seca, one of my favorite tracks anywhere in the country. I know Tom has a few of those, but just the technicality, I think, of that particular track, Tom, everybody harkens back to the pass in the early 90s that Alex Zanardi made that really made Laguna Seca famous, because he passed where it was thought that nobody could pass in that corkscrew. And I'm excited to see how both the Pirelli cars and the entire Mazda Road to Indy, because I think lest we forget, they'll be in action for championship weekend as well this weekend. So I'll be interested to see how all of those cars tackle the corkscrew, because at least for the Road to Indy, it's the first time they've ever been at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and I had forgotten all about that Zanardi pass until you just mentioned it again. Alex Zanardi managed to do a lot of things with an Indy car that people didn't think that were possible. Where was it? Michigan, where he was practically sideways. I'm trying to think what I can't remember what was going on. I'm pretty sure it was in Michigan, though. He either lost the brakes or the throttle was sticking or something, and boy, he was a miracle that he was able to, but he led for a bunch of laps before he finally pulled off the track. He's a phenomenal racer. And yeah, I can't wait to see what both of these series do on that track. I love that track. I think it's a neat course, and it is very technical. And the Road to Indy should be very interesting with the mix of drivers they've got this year in that series.
Oh, absolutely. I'm super excited about that. So definitely a lot to factor in headed to this weekend, Tom. One more thing I want to factor in this segment is the fact we had an ARCA race on Labor Day Monday at DuQuoin at the DuQuoin State Fairgrounds, the mile dirt track there. And Kyle Weatherman almost had himself another dirt win. He charged to second a couple weeks ago in Springfield. This time he was leading until the very last lap. Care to guess who won that race?
I'll let you say it.
Grant Enfinger again.
Yeah. It typically the cream rises to the top this time of the year, doesn't it? But Grant certainly made a statement with that one. I was actually a little surprised that he got the win there with all of the other guys that were coming in. We thought maybe Tyler Dipple might run for the win. He had some misfortune. Schrader was there. You gotta give credit to Grant and that whole team, because those guys, it's very rare anymore that they're not around at the finish, whether they're winning or not, or just, being on the podium or somewhere in the top 5. But that's what wins championships. We talked about it earlier, the consistency. And in this case, he was there when he needed to be and ended up getting the win, which, it says a lot about his chances at the championship right now.
Yeah, I think it does. We've only got a couple races to go, Tom, and Grant's got a 180-point lead heading to Salem here next weekend. That's a race that's going to be a lot of fun. Tyler Dipple, you mentioned, going to be making his first asphalt ARCA start in that race as part of a 4-car effort for Lyra Motorsports. Blake Jones will be in the field. Todd Gilliland anticipated to be in the field. Of course, you've got Schrader's car. You've got, I want to say Frank Kimmel's going to be in the 25 car for the final time this season at Salem, looking for win number 10 at that track. Of course, you've got Enfinger, Austin Self, the regulars. It's going to be a fun race. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, Grant, he's got a stranglehold on the championship. Josh Williams is second in points. I think that's the real story of this season. He wasn't even planning on running the entire schedule, and he's in position to finish up there on the podium in the championship standings. And I really think that deserves a little bit of applause, because Josh is an unheralded driver that you and I have gotten to know as working on other cars at the summer shootout at Charlotte most of the time in June and July. So for him to be doing what he's doing in what's really an underfunded car, really happy for him.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right. I guess we're going to do a little bit of final preparations here. Come back for picks, pull out our crystal balls. We've got 2 races this weekend. We'll preview the Chase in just a moment as well, and try to figure out and make sense of the 3/4 mile up there in Virginia. Final round of discussion coming up right after this. You are listening to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show here on the Performance Motorsports Network, the voice of motorsports.
Motorsports sales professionals. Performance Motorsports is looking to build a team of experienced media sales professionals to represent our programming to the industry's top companies, magazines, and racing series. If you have motorsports sales or marketing experience, know how to work with agencies, understand social media, and are incredibly creative when it comes to working with clients and promotions, then we want to hear from you. Top performers are richly rewarded. Your imagination is the only limit here. Call 717-749-0444. That's 717-749-0444, or email us at scorpionradiogroup@gmail.com. You want to ask for Sue.
Every 30 minutes, another innocent person is killed due to a drunk driver.
My best friend. My brother. My poor grandchild.
My sister.
My father.
My husband.
My mom. My mommy.
Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around you.
Stop these tragedies before they happen. Don't drink and drive.
Do you love the sound of high revving motors and the smell of burning rubber? Do you want to get your car sideways right at the ragged edge of control? If you've always wanted to try drifting or learn to improve your drifting skills, Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier motorsports facility, has the expert instructors and the specialized track to teach you how to drift and the skills necessary to drift competitively. From skid pad to open sessions, Summit Point Motorsports Park has the safe and open environment that allows drifters of all skill levels, new to intermediate, to get sideways and smoking. With a focus on safety and the skill set necessary to drift competitively, Summit Point Motorsports Park's Drift Nirvana is just the thing for you. Call for your reservation today, 304-725-8444. Or for more information, go online, summitpoint-raceway.com, or you can email them at office@bsrinc.com. Drift Nirvana, getting you sideways the right way.
If you own a gun, you have a full-time responsibility. When you aren't using it, be sure it can't get into the hands of curious children, troubled teenagers, a thief, or anyone else who might misuse it. Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org. This message brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the Ad Council.
Here we go with more of the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Welcome back to the final segment for tonight for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show and Motorsports Madness combined here this week on the Performance Motorsports Network. The RaceChaserOnline.com crew talking motorsports with you. Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, Kyle Magda, and Hunter Smith. And Jacob, it is about that time where normally we would be wrapping things up going into the weekend on our Thursday night show. We're going to import the final lap segment from our Monday show and actually do picks for this week. We do performance picks each and every Monday night on Motorsports Madness, but since we didn't have a show on Monday, Jacob, I'll let you steer the ship because you've got the stats in front of you. I know that I won the Cup race, but I don't think I won much else over the weekend.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. I was actually pulling up the numbers as we speak. We all kind of were over the weekend.
Exceedingly average.
Yeah, exceedingly average. Hunter actually gets to go first, and this is after a heavy weekend in the form of the Labor Day holiday weekend. This weekend is really light. All we have are tomorrow night's Xfinity race and the Cup race, which of course are both very big deals because it's ready for the reset in the Cup Series, and the Xfinity Series championships coming down to the wire. This is a very pivotal weekend in both series, Hunter, and I'm excited about Saturday night. This Cup chase, especially knowing that for anybody from 17th to 30th in the chase grid standings, all you have to do is win and you're in. Woohoo!
You make it sound a lot easier than it actually is. Jacob.
I know.
All you got to do is win. It's just a little bit difficult there, But I think I'm going to go for the Xfinity race tomorrow night. I'm going to take Kyle Busch because I feel like that 54 has always been good at Richmond. I know when it was Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, Kurt Busch took the first win for KBM at Richmond in the 54. So now there's Joe Gibbs, a good team. Kyle's good at Richmond. I'm going to take KB for the Xfinity race. And for the Cup race, a guy that's been pretty good at Richmond of late, probably past year or two, I'm going to go Joey Logano. I think he's going to get a little late season run into the chase. These Penske guys, even last year, Keselowski came on with a late charge kind of at the end of the year. So I think Logano is going to go ahead and take it. We'll see how this chase scenario plays out. I like the guys that are in the chase right now. Would be a good field, I think, to definitely run for the championship. So Kyle Busch and Joey Logano for the weekend for me.
Didn't Joey win the Cup race at Richmond last year, Tom? I think he did.
I think he did, yeah.
See, Hunter's getting smart here now. We've had him in this last segment with us a few times, and he's getting really, really smart.
You're rubbing off on me, guys. That's what it is, I guess.
It's something.
Well, Joey, a cup race is not a reach here. I mean,
well, yeah,
he's a good little short track driver. I'll give him that.
He's a good driver, period, right now.
That's what I'm going
with. I lied, actually. It was his teammate, Brad Keselowski, who actually won the race.
Penske swept the year, though.
Penske won.
Yeah, they did. He won the spring race, I think, is what it was. So all in good fun. Anyway, let's see. Kyle Magda, you're next. I had to look at my numbers for a second, even though you won the Xfinity race and then didn't win much else.
Yeah, I know. I had Kevin Harvick there until that caution flew late in the race. That kind of killed that. So, yeah, I mean, picking well for the K9 race, I want to pick Austin Hill. I'm just joking because he won tonight. But
rain, go away.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I mean, for Xfinity, I don't think there's many Cup guys running this. Actually, I'm gonna take Austin Dillon. And then for the Cup race, I will take Kevin Harvick. I like his car, by the way. I think it's like get a ride home or something, or drive home. I have to look at it again, but Kevin Harvick, I think he was third. He was second in the spring, third last fall. So I'll take Austin Dillon and Kevin Harvick for this weekend, Jacob.
Did you cheat? Because Austin Dillon was fastest in practice earlier today.
Well, I didn't know who I could pick, so I don't know.
Cheating's
I mean, I
allowed.
guess usually it's pick the Cup guys who are entered. So.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's many
24.
Cup guys in it either. I think it's probably Austin and Kyle, I think.
That looks to be about right. I wanted to know who was in the 22 because Joey Logano. Why am I not surprised by this? Let's see. Tom, you're next. And if you do what I think you're going to do for the Xfinity race, I'm going to be happy because I know who I'm picking.
Well, I don't know what you think I'm going to do, but I'm actually going to take a flyer on this. This is a week when you tend, well, it's not a real reach, but this is a week when you tend to, I think, the stage gets big, things happen, people make mistakes. It'd be tempting to take Joey Logano, and I probably should but you know what? I'm actually gonna just take a flyer here, and I'm gonna say that Chase Elliott is gonna get a win at Richmond in the Cup Light Series, and in the Real Cup Series, the Sprint Cup Series. Y'all left the biggest story right on the table for me, so I'm going to take him. Denny Hamlin with a torn ACL is going to go to victory lane and win at Richmond. The only bigger story would be if Clint Boyer actually goes and wins at Richmond. Jacob or Jeff Gordon, perhaps. Jacob, you gonna be brave and take one of those two?
Actually, no, I'm not. I might be a little bit braver. No. What's the fun in that? Xfinity race. I'm going to make this real short and real simple, and it's not Joey Logano either, by the way, Tom. Okay. I'm going to take the one guy who's not running for points in the Xfinity series yet, but really, really, really ought to be because, darn it, he's been fast this year, and he's already got a win under his belt. I'll take the 20 car with Eric Jones to go to victory lane at Richmond.
Good pick.
I didn't want to pick an Xfinity guy, but I didn't want to pick a Cup guy, so I figured I'd pick the one guy that didn't fit into either one of those categories.
Pick the truck guy. There you go.
Yeah,
of course.
Exactly. And for the Cup race, I was almost going to be really brave for a minute, but I'm going to not do that, and I'm going to pick a guy that's brave only because he's never won this race. He's won the Richmond spring race. Wow, I can't talk straight tonight, child. He's won the Richmond spring race every way that there is to win it, just about. He's never had any luck in this race, though. I think that's going to change this weekend because I think he's going to win the race and complete the ultimate comeback, going from outside the top 30 to the top of the chase grid, going into the chase. I'll take Rowdy Busch.
Naturally, I was hoping I could prod you into actually reaching, and you stayed on your 2-inch limb.
It's not a 2-inch limb in this
thought you were
race,
going
though,
the Tony
Tom.
Stewart route.
Kyle Busch is a 2-inch limb in any race.
Not this race, though. His average finish in this race is like 20th. He's good in the spring. He's never had any sort of a good car in
Runner-up
this
finishes
particular race, and I think he's finally got the inspiration to change that.
I don't think if you see there again, you way too much about stats. It doesn't matter. The hottest two teams in the series right now are the Penske team and the Gibbs team, and Kyle Busch is probably about the hottest driver. So, I mean, picking Kyle or Joey Logano in any race is not any more than a 2-inch limb. And, you know, Kyle, you're right. He's got some serious momentum right now, and I don't care if he's won the fall race or not. That doesn't mean anything. It's what are you going to do this weekend? And right now, that 18 team is just on a roll. And, you know, this is going to be a fun race because we focus on the winners, but really we should have a little bit of discussion, Jacob, about some of the guys that are on the bubble, because that's really going to be, it may be a great race up front for the win, but it's definitely going to be a great race for the last chase spots, because
that's exactly where I was headed, actually. And this is how we're going to do the final thoughts and lightning round tonight, Tom, is we're going to end the show about like we usually start it. So I'll go to you first and give you 3 options here. Eric Almirola, who's the first man out, Clint Bowyer, who's the last man in, or somebody else that has to win and get in. Who are you buying, or are you selling all of it?
Well, that's an interesting question, because you said or someone else who has to win to get in. I don't see anybody from that category being a big surprise and winning and
Kyle
getting
Larson
into the chase.
sometimes runs well at Richmond.
Perhaps
That's your only stretch, I think. That's my opinion.
Would be and I looked earlier and noticed that there is a chance if Kyle wins the race that Felix Sabates could still be right in what he said in January, that both of his cars will make the chase. Otherwise, I think only Jamie Mack's going to make it.
First time he's been the chase too.
Yeah, I would actually, of that group, I would probably sell all of them. The only possibility I see here is Clint Bowyer. And, I don't think Clint's going to have necessarily a car to win, but I could certainly, he loves this place. I could certainly see him running well enough to get himself in the chase. Not sure about Almirola at this point. I think Bowyer, of the ones that you mentioned, certainly would be the one I would have to ride with if I had to pick somebody to get himself in.
Well, he can go for a win this year. He doesn't have to
barely
spin
in.
out.
Yeah.
Don't go there, Hunter. He's barely in. He just doesn't need to screw up Kyle Magda like he did a couple years ago and find a way to mentally outsmart himself right out of this chase.
Well, that's when I was still on the fan side. I wasn't very happy with Clint Bowyer at the time, but I understand. Michael Waltrip Racing's leaving at the end of the year, but yeah, like Tom said, I'm selling all of it. I think that the chase grid stays the same. I don't see any surprises. Kind of like last year's race, Brad Keselowski going out there and leading all but 17 laps. I just don't see another driver getting outside of the top, out of the chase grid and getting up there, Jacob. I just do not see it happening this year again.
Hunter?
Like I said earlier, my only stretch would be Kyle Larson to potentially get up there and maybe get a win. I mean, I don't think anybody else is going to point their way in, though. I pretty much think I would love to see Almirola get in over Bowyer, but that's just my personal opinion. Do I think it's going to happen? Not likely, but you never know. These things get crazy in the last little minutes there.
Yeah, Almirola's got to make up 30 points to displace Bowyer for that final chase spot, Tom. And you know what? I personally would like to see Bowyer get in, because Michael Waltrip Racing's going out the door. They need one final bright spot before they go.
Yeah, I just like seeing the 43 car have success. I mean, I think that's, but I agree. And it's nothing against Bowyer or anything else, just, saying, but yeah, that's going to be, Bowyer really just needs to control his destiny and have a good, decent run and not make any big mistakes. That's the big thing.
Yeah, it really is. And we get ready to throw a checkered flag on tonight's show. And before we do that, we do want to remind you that we could not make this show possible without our friends and partners at Stock Car Steel and Aluminum and SRI Supplies, who help make this show possible every Thursday night. You can visit them on the web at stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com for all your shop supply and scrap metal needs. And as we get set to go off the air tonight, tomorrow night's Xfinity race, as it falls several times in the past few years, will fall on September 11th. And we know prior to the race, there will be several salutes to our armed servicemen and women across the globe who continue to defend the freedom that we enjoy and get to celebrate every time we go to a racing or any other sporting event. And as we get ready to say goodnight, we too here at the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show and the Performance Motorsports Network want to salute those who continue to defend that freedom and also salute those who fell on that fateful day 14 years ago. Their families remain in our thoughts and prayers, and we will think of them tomorrow just as we do every year on this day. So we say a special thanks to all of those in uniform across the globe. We salute you, and we get ready to say goodnight. But as we do, we remind you to keep it off the wall until we meet again, and we will see you at the racetrack. Have a safe racing weekend, everyone. God bless America. Good night.
You've been listening to the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show on the Performance Motorsports Network. Tonight's show is brought to you by Stock Car Steel and Aluminum and SRI Supply. For all of your racing needs, visit stockcarsteel.com and SRI-supplies.com. Keep up with the latest motorsports news every day on Race Chaser Online. The Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show is a copyrighted production of the Performance Motorsports Network. www.performancemotorsportsnetwork.com, a member of the Scorpion Radio Group, Inc., and may not be rebroadcast, replicated, or saved in any media without the explicit written permission of PMN. Check out our Facebook page or our section on the PMN website. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the host, co-hosts, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of the management and ownership of either the Performance Motorsports Network or Scorpion Radio Group Incorporated, the advertisers, or the marketing partners. Be listening again next week for more great motorsports programming right here on the Performance Motorsports Network.